Welcome to Every Child Belongs. I'm Kim Botto, an adoptive mom, grandma, an advocate for kids and teens with disabilities, as well as a longtime leader of kids and student ministries. In this show, we explore how we can create spaces where every child feels heard and valued, whether neurodivergent, differently abled, or they've experienced trauma. Every child belongs. We'll hear from educators, parents, professionals, and more, finding practical ideas that help build a compassionate and supportive world for every child. Let's get started. Today is a special day because we have Chuck Mingo on here with us. Chuck, golly, we worked together for what, 15, 16, something like that years?
Yes. Well, I have a 16-year-old and you knew me before I had kids. So
Oh my gosh,
it's
that's
probably longer than
right.
that. Yeah.
That's right. I'm still in denial that he's 16. Yeah, Chuck has three
Yeah.
kids, but Chuck is a teaching pastor at Crossroads Church. He also founded Undivided, which we're going to talk about more in a minute. He's also the husband to Maria, who is an amazing woman, wife, mother, friend, advocate. He has three kids. And I want to tell you, Chuck, do you know the first time I ever spoke on a big stage by myself? I mean, other than doing like announcements and stuff, it was with you. And we did it a couple times.
That's right.
Yes. And you gave me so much confidence. You are such an encourager. You made it so easy. You bring out the best in people. You make somebody who feels like, I have no idea what to say. You really help bring out the best. So I hope you do that for me today, even though this is about talking about you. But yeah, I've appreciated you for, I guess it's been now decades then.
Yes, indeed. And I feel the
Yeah.
same way, Kim. I mean, I told you this before we went live, just how excited I am for just the places and the platforms that God has called you to and the voice that you have. It is so needed. The impact of your leadership and the culture you created for kids at our church continues and will continue. And I'm just excited that more people get to know my friend Kim Botto and get to be blessed by what God has given you.
Stop it. You're not supposed to be encouraging, Chuck. This is supposed to
Oh,
be about
okay.
you. But thank you.
All right.
But thank you. I received that. I need
That's
to
good.
practice.
That's good.
I received that, Chuck. So, Chuck, what did I leave out? What do you want people to know?
I think you hit it. I love being a husband and a dad, and that is really where I want to start. You know, any person trying to get to know me, because the people who know me best are my wife and my kids. They keep me humble because they know the good, the bad, and the ugly. And yeah, I'm a lover of people, a lover of God, and I love just this opportunity. I'm an includer. I'm a natural includer, and I feel like no matter where I am, I'm always going to be looking for the people who may not feel like they belong and inviting them to have not just a seat at the table, but their voice at the table. And that's
Yes.
just my heart.
Yes, that is what you do. And because of that, you founded Undivided.
Hmm.
So tell us what that, and it is an amazing organization. I got to go through, I think it was like the first time we were kind of a pilot group, weren't we?
You were.
Yeah.
You were.
Yeah.
You were in the room at the very beginning, 2016. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about Undivided.
Yeah, so Undivided really birthed out of an amazing friendship that God brought into my life in 2014 with one of the co-founders, Troy Jackson. And this was at a time where there was just, when is there ever not a time when there's racial conflict in our country? But this was a
Mm-hmm.
notable time. The events that had happened in Ferguson were recent. And I sit down with Troy, and I love telling this story. And for context, Troy is a middle-aged white guy. I am a middle-aged black guy. And so we sit down, and Troy had recently come back from being in Ferguson. He was there after the event had happened, just with the response and the outcry for justice that was coming and kind of expanding. And so we sit down actually at Crossroads Oakley, the church, literally the building I'm in right now. And Troy starts asking me these very direct questions about what's it like to be Black in America right now? How are you feeling about the things that happen? How is it being in a majority white church as a Black leader? And I didn't know Troy well. And so we joke now that I gave him very PC, safe answers. Which quite frankly, I have to say, as a black man in majority white spaces, I had learned to do, right? That's part of the way that I navigate those spaces sometimes, is like, I'm not necessarily going to open up. I don't know if I can trust you. But at some point in the conversation, I realized Troy was committed to this work of healing and justice across race. And I trusted him, and I began to share with him. And as I shared with him, he invited me on a journey to learn more about how to live out my faith in the public square. And that led to some amazing things. But then about 6 months later, I got this call to do something. It wasn't called Undivided at the time, but to do something for our church, for Crossroads, to be a place where we were helping followers of Jesus figure out what I was trying to figure out, which is, how do I respond to racial injustice? And what does that look like? And what does Jesus have to say about this? And out of that, and out of an amazing team of people, launched Undivided. And so today, Undivided is still at its core a 7-week experience where we get people into diverse groups and really have a formation opportunity where you learn to listen well and to share story and to understand and contextualize history. And most importantly, to understand what God has to say and what is his call to followers of Jesus in these kinds of situations. And then we give people a platform from which to act, to do the work of justice. We talk about Micah 6:8 in Undivided that, says, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice? Not just talk about justice, but to do justice, to love mercy and to walk humbly with God. And so today, Undivided is still an organization helping to, expand and cultivate spaces of belonging that activate people to take agency when it comes to racial healing. And I'm honored to have been one of the founders of it, honored to still be a part of it today, and really honored that you stepped in and said yes in 2016 to be in a pilot group, because those experiences continue to shape the trajectory of Undivided today.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see it grow. I mean, it's a nationwide program.
Yes.
It's not just a faith base. There,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's in corporations and different companies. And going back to that initial, uh, that was an eye opener for me. Just looking at images, and I'm thinking it's just a
Yeah.
picture, and
Yeah.
then talking to people who look different from me, who have different backgrounds, and they looked at that image and it brought up something totally different. So tell
Yes.
me what you learned along the way as far as belonging and empathy towards one another.
Yeah. One of the things, and I'm not, this is not original to me. I heard this somewhere, but I think it's true. Someone said listening to another person is so much like love that most people can't tell the difference. And I have found that to be so true, that what all of us want is a place where our story is heard, where it's validated. You don't even need to necessarily agree with everything that I'm interpreting from this story, but can we just hold the dignity of a person's story and give them a space to share it? And I have found over and over again in Undivided, that is probably the most profound practice that people exercise in the work. We put great intentionality into what we teach them and how we teach it, and we put great investment into great facilitators who can facilitate an experience. And yet I feel like all of that is so that there can be these moments where a person gets to just listen and give dignity to someone else's lived experience. And then they share their experience, and that exchange is so powerful. So I think I've learned that for sure. I think I've also learned and continue to learn that this work is always going to be opposed, and therefore it will always require courage. I wouldn't say that I'm a big risk taker in the sense of like, I'm not a person who does risky sports or anything like that. But I have had to over and over again risk for this calling that God has given me. And sometimes that risk is just, will I risk public, people not agreeing with me, not liking what I said? Sometimes that risk has been financial risk or relational risk. There's always going to be risk. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned over the years is, if you think there's a way to experience the solidarity and belonging we want in our culture and in our churches and in our families and in our communities without risk, you're sorely mistaken. And I think a lot of people back
Sure.
away from it because they say the risk is too great. And yet, for us at Undivided, our inspiration and our model is Jesus, who was willing to literally risk everything to love. He risked it all. He gave his life for others to experience and know the love of God, the belonging that comes from being a part of the family of God. And so I think those are some of the lessons I've learned. I've also learned this, Kim. There's a lot of joy to be had in this work of pursuing belonging and even justice. There's joy. Some of the most joyful moments I've experienced over the last 8 to 10 years have been when I'm like grinding it out and sweaty and trying to figure something out, and or we're on location trying to do something. This work has brought incredible joy to my life as well, and I think that's also some of the lessons that I've learned.
Yeah, those are good. You talking about risk, Chuck, there may be areas of your life where you don't take risk.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I have seen you take risks, and it's stepping into the uncomfortable. And so what encouragement would you give people? Because also when we engage with a kid who's different, who's maybe behaving in a way that doesn't meet our expectations, often we want to step away. So how do we take that risk and step forward?
So interesting. I just, as timing would have it, I just had a conversation yesterday with someone who has been involved in our inclusion ministry at Crossroads, a ministry that you are instrumental in really helping to foster and support, where kids who are different, and whether that's different learning styles or different abilities, have a place in our church. And they were talking about their friends, because they're like in their 20s. They were like, hey, when I try to recruit my friends to this, a lot of my friends are afraid. They're just like, I don't know how to act. I don't know how to respond. And the young lady who I was with said, and she said, what I've learned though is what's needed most is just for you to show up, and be
Yes.
present and be a friend. And anybody can do that, right? And you'll learn some ways that work and some ways that don't work. And so I think what I would say to people who are cautious or fearful about engaging with a child whose needs may be different, or whose approach to life or their communication and their abilities might be different, is man, just never underestimate the power of showing up anyway. I think about people who have helped me by saying things like, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. And that doesn't mean you want to harm people. I don't mean it like that.
Right.
But,
Right.
I mean, people look at you, Kim, and, you could be seen as a ninja or a guru when it comes to this. And yet I know you probably had a very significant learning journey. The reason that you can say, hey, here's a way that works is probably because you've done 7 or 8 ways that didn't work. I may not be confident that this works in every situation, but I know these 6 or 7 mistakes don't work. Right. So I think you
Right.
get there
Right.
over time, but yeah, just, and that's true for so many areas of our life. There are so many areas where I know I'm still reluctant to show up fully because I'm not sure I have what it takes. And yet, the power of showing up, especially for another person, 9 times out of 10, honestly, 10 times out of 10, it's enough. It really is
Yes.
enough.
Yes. And I'll say for me, I'm still learning, Chuck. We had a situation a couple weekends ago with a child where I had to stop and think and try a couple different things. I mean, we're continuing to learn and grow. I love that. Yes, just show up. And you talked earlier about the importance of listening.
Hmm.
So how can we be a better listener?
Mm,
Especially with people who are different.
yes, yes. I think about a mutual friend that we have who's a mentor in my life. His name is Chuck Moore.
Yes.
And
Oh, I love Chuck.
if
Yes.
I were to summarize one of the top 3 messages that Chuck has given me over the he's been my mentor for over probably 15, 16
Mhm.
years too. Um, it's to slow down. I think I know me. I live at a pace that quite frankly is not sustainable. And one of the first things to fall away when I'm sped up is I stop listening well. I mean, literally, if I was doing this right now and I was driving, how many times I would have had to say, "Hey, would you repeat that question?"
Right.
Remind me, Kim. What am I answering? Because I'm
Uh-huh.
living at a pace that's not sustainable, and it's certainly not sustainable for listening. And I think this is again where I just am so inspired by the example of Jesus. It's interesting when you look in the Bible, Jesus was super productive. There's no doubt. I mean, you could argue he was the most productive human that ever lived. When you think about what he produced and what he
Right.
created in terms of a movement. And yet, there's not one place in the Bible where Jesus was in a hurry. He was focused, he was intentional, but it never says Jesus scurried from one place to another. Jesus was running because he was late for whatever. You never hear that. And because of that, there were times when Jesus was able to just stop and be present with people who honestly no one else was. I mean, the one that comes to mind immediately is Zacchaeus, right? Like, this guy's an
Mm-hmm.
outcast. Nobody likes him. And Jesus is like walking with purpose, but he stops. And I think, it's interesting. I think Jesus was pinged by the Spirit of God to stop and look up and say, hey, come down. I'm going to spend some time with you. And I think for us, when it comes to listening well, we've got to be interruptible. And that's hard. That's hard. I don't want to always be interruptible. I don't know if I ever want to be interruptible, but I think there's something about pace that helps us be good listeners. And then from that place, I think a lot of us, can benefit from just some basic listening skills, right? I mean, you and I have learned some of these together in different settings, like what's it like to be warm, right? Just to offer warmth to people. Hey, I'm here. My body language says I'm interested in you. Empathy, just being able to say, hey, this is the feeling that I'm sensing. I don't necessarily know what it's like to live your life, Kim, but if you're feeling afraid, I can tap into a time in my life where I was afraid, think about what I needed, and then continue to engage you with curious listening. And just respect. Again, it goes back to just giving dignity to that person's experience and story. And that's true for kids too. I mean, you helped me to learn this, that
Mm-hmm.
um, kids have a lot to say. And often we just don't hang with them long enough for them to say it. I'm learning this with my own kids. If I ask my kids a question, I rarely get right away. But if I hang
Right.
in there and I'm around, they'll come back and they'll say, hey, I thought about what you said, Dad, and here's more. And it's just powerful. And I've learned, I'm an early morning person. And what I've learned about at least my teenager is the times when he wants to open up are usually not early in the morning.
No. No.
They're usually, for me, like I'm sometimes already in bed,
Hours
you know?
past bedtime.
Right? And then it's like, oh, he wants to talk. And I've literally had these, I'm sure you've experienced this, where like I'm laying down and he's saying goodnight and I'm saying goodnight thinking that's what we're doing. And then he wants to process something. And because I am such a, like, I will fall asleep on you, I have to literally get up, stand up and talk. So I don't fall asleep on him because that's the moment when he wants to share. That's true with Maria too. Maria's a night owl. And there are times when I'm like, all right, good night. And she's ready to talk. And if I'm on my game, I will notice that and I will be interruptible, even from sleep, and have that conversation with her. And so those are just some things I've learned about being a good listener. I'm probably giving you more than you need, but I
No,
just,
no, that's
I,
good. And you're right. Because for somebody who goes to bed early, it's not convenient that
no,
Nathan or Sam want to talk late at
right.
night. However, as their parent, if you want to prioritize the relationship, sometimes we have to talk at times that aren't the most convenient, or not even talk. We have to listen at times that
Yes.
aren't the most convenient for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I don't always get it right. I don't always get it right. And I think it's okay to say that. Like, I've learned to say I'm sorry to my kids and try to own when I fall short, because that also, I think, confers respect on them. It says you were worthy of my attention and I didn't give it to you because I was distracted or in my own world.
Right, right. So we're talking about your kids. And as we said earlier, you have three beautiful kids. You're a multicultural family.
We are. We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
Mm-hmm.
talked earlier, and I'll just say, I want to know more about that and how that plays out. Even beforehand, I said, Chuck, like, how do I ask that question? So I'm just going to say, I'm going to make the statement, you are a multicultural family. Tell us more about that and what challenges there are, what joys there are in that, and what those of us who aren't a multicultural family,
Mm-hmm.
what would you like us to know?
That's good. That's so good. First, just for context for listeners, so my wife is Puerto Rican, and grew up in Pennsylvania, but is Puerto Rican by culture, and you don't always know by my voice, but I'm black. I'm African American male. Sometimes people are like, I thought you were a white guy, but I'm not. Um,
You are not.
and
You are not.
so I'm not. You can, if you're watching the
I
video, you can
confirm.
see.
I
You
confirm
can
that.
confirm. And so it's interesting because I think Maria and I probably didn't spend enough time on the front end before getting married realizing or reckoning with the depth of our cultural differences as a family. We did some great premarital stuff when we got to Crossroads, but we were already married by then. And I just think, like, I guess what I would say is if you're married, you're in a multicultural marriage. you got you guys could have grown up literally next door to each other in a small town, but family cultures are different, right? And so I think this principle that we've learned is true for every family, which is like, what do you want to keep from your culture? What do you want to not keep from your culture? And where collectively together do you want to create new culture? And I think for us, we're constantly having that conversation and navigation. That's what it looks like for us to be in a multicultural family. There are things, I mean, there's a lot that we both love about our. I love my African American culture. I love that I grew up in a black church, and I love like my family is very gregarious and outgoing, and we dance and we laugh and we're loud. All that's true in
Mm-hmm.
my family, and I love that. I love that. And so one of the things that Maria and I have talked about is like, what are the aspects of the black experience that we want our kids to be exposed to and live into. And then for her, with Puerto Rican culture, they can also be loud. And they also have their own different kinds of music and the foods that they eat. And there's different things there. Our kids are not fluent in Spanish. My wife is. If I could do anything over, I would have loved to have prioritized supporting Spanish being the first language that we speak in our home so that our kids have more of that to carry into their world. They all take Spanish in school. They got some stuff, but I wish that we had done more around that. But again, it's asking those questions about what do we want to keep. And the thing I would say about being multicultural in the way that we are is it constantly comes up with our kids because I want my kids to embrace their full identity. That they are black and Latino, right? They're Afro Latino kids. That's what they are from a cultural standpoint. Unfortunately, there are times when society either doesn't see that or doesn't validate that. I mean, most people, if they look at my boys, will say those are black boys. They might say, oh, they're made because they have curly hair, and so you might see some other
Mm-hmm.
aspects, but most people are going to see them as black boys. And so Maria and I've had to again be very honest about how do we prepare our boys in particular to live in the world as it is. And so there are some things that we have taught our boys, and there are some things that we're helping them through because we know that not everybody's going to have the second question of, oh, well, tell me about the cultural origins of your parents. They're going to make an
Right.
assumption. And so they
Right.
need to be ready to live in a world that's going to make that quick judgment assumption and all that comes with it. So it's not without its challenges, but far, far more it's beautiful. And I'll say this, and I know you know this about Maria. One of the things Maria has done amazingly well in our household is created a literature rich environment.
Yes.
All of our kids are
Yes.
surrounded by books. And she has made sure that those books represent the beauty and the diversity of the world that we live in and of the kingdom of God. So our kids have read books on every culture, not just black culture and Latino culture, but they have read books on all kinds of cultures around the world. She's intentionally brought that in. Our Christmas collection alone has such richness and diversity. So the stories that we read at Christmas time aren't just stories that come from the American context of Christmas, but they come from other parts of the world. She's just done a really good job of that. And one of the things I would say to families, and you know this, and again, Maria is amazing at this, is it's awesome if your kids get to experience cultural diversity at your table because your set of friends or the places where you spend time enable that. The reality for many of us is our tables aren't going to be the most culturally diverse space our kids could experience.
Mm-hmm.
But books
Yes.
is an amazing
Yes.
way to add cultural richness to your home. And you can start them young and you can keep it going so that your kids might say, hey, well, we never had a person that was Asian over to our home, but I remember this great book that my mom used to read to me. And it was a window into Asian culture for me. And so that's not totally foreign to me. I'm not saying their kids can be expert at it, but you've exposed your kids to the richness of diversity. So I think we've had to do that because we're a culturally diverse family, but I also think every family has the opportunity to create that same kind of environment. It's good. It's really good for our kids to have that.
Oh, absolutely. You know what? November, I'm going to come over to your house. I'm going to have Maria show me some of her books so I can
She's got them.
expand. Because I have a lot of books from a lot of different cultures, but I'm sure she has even more. And the books, I always tell families if they have a kid in their class who's autistic and their child who's typical doesn't know how to relate, I'm like, I can give you 10 books. Check them out from the library.
Absolutely.
And they don't have to be just about autism. They can just be about how you are an includer and how people might feel left out. So
That's right.
so as we continue, so Maria's the expert. We need to get Maria on here.
You do.
Um,
She's the expert.
I remember years ago we did a it was called Parents Time Out. And I think we had you on, and you talked so much about Maria. We said, hey, you know what? We love you, Chuck, but let's
I'm the
bring
B
Maria
team.
back with you next. Let's bring Maria
This is
back
the
next
B
time.
team. This is
So
totally the B team. I agree.
Chuck, actually, you and Maria are both really good at different things, and that's what makes you such a good team. So don't be dissing yourself. Don't be dissing my
Thank you,
friend
Kim.
Chuck Mingo.
Thank you,
Alrighty?
Kim. Thank you.
As we continue this conversation, I want to let you know my new book, Boundless Hope, is available now. If you're looking for more resources, strategies, and encouragement to assure every child feels like they belong, this book is for you. Visit kimbotto.com or Amazon to order your copy today. So we're talking about kids and feeling different. What do you think, like when we look at kids who are different and they don't feel like they belong, and you've given us some strategies for the kid who's feeling different, because you've been in environments where you feel different because you're the only
I have.
black guy.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
was that? Can I say that you were the only black guy? I'm always asking you, Chuck.
Yes.
Can I?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
you're the only black guy. What does that feel like? So for our kids that are in our environment that are different, maybe their brains are wired differently, maybe they don't use words to speak. What's helpful for us to know about them and how we can be an includer?
It's a really good question, and I want to answer it from my own experience because
Yes, that's what we
I'm an
want.
I'm an
Yes,
N of one, right? So
right.
here's what I will tell you, and I'll start with a story that just illustrates my journey. Again, it's my experience. Um, I spent most of my like kindergarten through eighth grade. I went to a very small Christian school in a suburb of Philadelphia. That's where I went to school. Where many times I was either the only or one of a few, certainly black males, but even just black students in the class. And Kim, one of the things that I still remember is that I had a habit when I was, and this is probably, I don't know, third, fourth grade, somewhere in those awkward years, maybe early middle school. Um, I would purse my lips and kind of pull my lips in. And the reason I did that is because relative to my Caucasian classmates, my lips were fuller than theirs. And I remember being so self-conscious of that. Nobody said anything. No one ever teased me about that. It wasn't anything like that. I was conscious and insecure about that. And I remember that because it was so visceral and it was so real. And it was like, it was kind of always there. So I think what I would say is, and maybe this is extrapolating, this may not be true for everyone who's in an environment like that, but I will say, I think when you are the only of anything, I'm sure you've been the only woman in
Yeah.
many settings before,
Yep.
right? Or the only one with that's an adoptive parent. I know aspects of you. I think when you're in that environment, there's this automatic thing in your brain that points it out. The person is aware of it on some level. And I think it's probably like just a survival mechanism. I really do. I think it's just if you're observant and you're self-aware, you're kind of like, huh, how do I show up in this space? Oh, I'm the tallest person here. I'm the shortest person here. I'm the only person of color here. I'm the, whatever it may be. Um, so I think as we think about approaching people who are different, assume they're aware of the difference
Yeah, that's
and
good.
assume two things at the same time, that they want you to honor that difference. They don't want you to ignore it, but they also want to be seen as more than just that difference. So I think like what I try to do in situations like that is, I mean, I don't go up to them and say, "Hey, you're the only whatever," but like
Right.
I'm aware that they're different. And in my case, again, because I'm an includer, a lot of times that is why I'm coming to them. I'm coming to them because I want to make sure they feel included in whatever the thing is. Um, and so I want to honor them by saying, I see you. I'm glad you're here. Tell me about yourself. Who are you? And, for me, as I'm engaging with the person, if they are atypical or whatever, I'm adjusting conversation and adjusting where I go next based on what they're giving me, right? Trying to just be very present. Um, but what I find is whenever you ask somebody, hey, tell me your background or your story, or what are you into? It's an opportunity for them to demonstrate that they're more than just the one thing that you see. And so that's what I would say is like maybe call them basic rules for the road, that I've never articulated until
Mm-hmm.
now, but I
Okay,
do
let's
think
hear
I
it.
practice, which is
Mm-hmm.
was just what I just said. Assume the person is aware of their difference. You don't
Right,
need to point it out.
right.
But also honor that difference, but at the same time, they want to be seen as more than just what makes them different.
Yes, yes. And that is so true of the kids who are different because so often in every environment that they're in, most of the conversation is around their challenging behavior, their
Yeah.
gaps in development. That's yeah, that's very important. So
Yeah.
Chuck, if you've worked a ton with trying to help churches be more inclusive, particularly around because I know years ago, what was it said? Sunday morning is the most segregated
Mm-hmm.
hour of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And you're working very hard to change that. That's one of the things I love about our church is I mean,
Yeah.
so often I cry during service looking around and there's a preppy little boy sitting next to me. There's a woman in oxygen in front of me, on oxygen in front of me, just really a diverse group.
It
But so
is.
you've learned a lot about that. But the church, they a lot of studies say the largest unchurched people group are disabled individuals.
Wow.
Yeah,
I believe
um,
that.
I don't. Studies have shown that 1 out of 3 families who have a kid with special needs have either left a church because they felt their kid wasn't welcome or they have been asked to leave. I talk to
Yeah.
families all the
Mm.
time who've gone to 7, 8, 9 churches and can't find a church to take their kid in. So, what would be your message to churches
Oh,
about these kids and their families? Because we're not just losing the kid, we're losing their whole family.
we're losing the family. Kim, I will tell you, okay, I'm getting chills because there's a theme emerging for me. I believe God still speaks. And one of the ways
Absolutely.
God speaks to me is through patterns, repeated patterns. Maybe because I'm hard headed and I need to hear things multiple times. That's what my parents would say when I was, you're hard headed,
Mm-hmm.
you need to listen. Um, but I'm just going to share with you my last 24 hours because the question you're asking me has emerged in the last 24 hours now 4 times.
Yes.
Number one, I was doing a walk and talk with somebody who's on staff, found out that before they came on staff, they were a therapist for special needs kids. So didn't know that, and just talking about, hey, how does that shape how you think? And they're in student ministry right now. So it's like, how's that shape? And he was telling me how that shapes his ministry. Second was the conversation I mentioned earlier with a young lady who's involved in our inclusion ministry. And so didn't know that was what I know her from a different role on staff and like
Mm-hmm.
learned all about that. This morning, And you'll remember this on staff. We have a staff team meeting. And one of the things that's a regular part of that meeting is we celebrate. We celebrate things that are happening in the community. And I wrote this down because I was like, wait a second, there's a trend here and I don't want to miss it. We had baptisms a couple of weeks ago. And so a lot of the celebrations were around baptisms. Two of the baptism stories were families who have immigrated to the U.S., different status, but they are finding in our church a place where they met Jesus and they got baptized. Two of the stories were about people with disabilities who got baptized and how the team was willing to make all the changes and adjustments needed for that to happen. And so here's what hit me, and I'm thinking about your question, and this is what I would say to churches. If it's true, since it's true, since it's true that one of the largest unchurched groups are people with disabilities, and to your point, by proxy, their families, right? Because their families aren't going to be able to come to a church that they can't come to. What a rich harvest field for the church who's willing to lean in on this. And here's what I believe. I mean, those baptisms tell me, I don't think we have to go and find them. I think they're coming to us. I think they're coming to church, asking the question, can I belong here? Is there a place for me here? And so the opportunity is for us to be able to say not just our good intentions, but our systems, how we train our volunteers in churches, how we talk about these things. We have the opportunity to say an emphatic yes, this is a place where you belong, because there's a place for everybody at the table of God. And I'm getting chills because I don't know, Kim. I feel like there's something in this next phase of the work that I'm doing at Crossroads that's going to be involved in this.
Oh, Chuck.
And I don't know what that means. And I know, like, as much as I want to say, hey, can your producer edit out these last 7 minutes? Because I'm making a commitment, but I just know when God is speaking, and he's showing me something that I've not seen before. We're doing a survey right now to try to get at how everybody experiences our church when it comes to unity and belonging. And one of the groups I'm really interested in talking to are people who, because of different abilities, experience Crossroads differently than I do, to just learn, like, where's it working? What are our opportunities? And to your point, how can we be reaching these folks who have incredible dignity, worth, and value in the eyes of God? And I want them to know that, I want to be a church where they're like, oh yeah, I feel like I belong there.
Yes.
I want Crossroads to be one of those churches. And I would hope every pastor would want to be one of those churches. And I know every pastor doesn't have the same resources as Crossroads. And there's a lot of different things that go into this. But I would pray that in the same way that we would never launch a church in this modern era and not have a kids ministry, that we think about inclusion ministry the same way.
Yes. And I'll say, I think every pastor would say, I want to be a place for every person. And surveys show it's like 97% of pastors say we are a place for people with disabilities. But people with disabilities are going,
no, you're not.
No, you're not.
Right.
Because I think a lot of us think, oh, we've got wide stalls in the bathroom. We have wheelchair ramps. And I heard it once said that people with disabilities are saying the church is accessible, the people aren't. And as I've been having more conversations, because I've always used the place at a table. But as I talk to more people who are disabled, some of them actually can't sit at the table. So even a sane place at the table will then some people then aren't able to come actually to the table. I was talking to a mom who her son, the church has to come to them in his house.
Wow.
Because it's hard for him to get out, and the church does, and he's a part of it. So, Chuck, I am so thrilled, and I want you to know, and I know you're already thinking, this is not a coincidence. I believe this is the Lord convicting you because you have a voice, you are well respected, and I will support you
in
any way possible.
Thank you.
our lives are enriched when we have people who are different with us. And I have, I'm in kids club on the weekend. I work with a lot of kids. I took a couple girls who are neurodivergent up to the kindergarten room last weekend, and it was amazing seeing them participate. But they can't just be thrown into a room with a whole bunch of kids and a whole bunch of noise. They need a buddy. And you don't need a master's degree. You just need to be kind. All the things you were talking about, a good listener. So
That's right.
Chuck, I'm so glad.
Can I say one other thing?
Yes.
I want to say one other thing, and I want to repent because here's what I want to repent of. I think that even as I thinking through how I'm talking, you said something that's really powerful. I don't want to just do this because these people need the church.
Yeah.
I want to do this because I know this is true. I need to be in community with different people.
Yes.
I see aspects of Jesus through people who have different abilities than I will any other way. I need them.
Yes.
I need them. It's about what they bring. They're an asset coming into the church and to our communities. And so I just want to say, like, man, if any of my framing of this, and I think most of it was about how we can help them, I just want to say I'm also aware how desperately I need to be helped by them to see God and to see myself more clearly and to love Jesus more. So I just wanted to say that.
Yes. And the more conversations we have, our perspective will change. And so that's super cool. If even during this conversation that your
Mm-hmm.
perspective changed a bit.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's
Yeah.
not your perspective change as much as you want to make sure that your words are clearly articulating what your perspective is. Chuck, when we're talking about kids who have autism or who have ADHD, we always try to remind people when you talk to a child with autism, you are talking to and learning about one child with autism because everybody's different. I know in Undivided, you all talk about that a lot too. So tell us more about how you think about that in Undivided.
Yeah, that's a great insight, first of all, because you're right. And I think in Undivided, the way that we think about that is in some ways to do the work of honoring one individual, you have to work against your brain's natural pattern of natural approach of pattern recognition. Because what I want to say is, well, if I know one person who is Hispanic or if I know one person who's Asian, now I know how to relate to Hispanic people. Now I know how to relate to Asian people. I want to do that because I want to win, right? I don't want to like be a failure in that relationship. And so, but if I treat them like the last 10 or 20 or 30 that I have met, um, it's dishonoring what makes them unique beyond their culture or their race or whatever if there was a child with autism. So I think for me, it's a really good reminder that I have to continue to be patient and present with the individual and not make assumptions. You know what they say about making assumptions. And it's hard. It's hard not to. For me, I think about it this way too. Not everybody sees race, believe it or not, Kim. Not everybody agrees with me on how I see race. Not everybody agrees on how I think about culture. Not everybody agrees with me on how I view God. And I think for me, particularly when I'm in maybe a tense conversation,
Mm-hmm.
there's a part of me that wants to categorize that person. Oh, you're that person. Now I know how to handle you. And if I do that, I miss the opportunity to learn, genuinely learn, and I also miss the opportunity to confer dignity on that person. So one of the things that's been helpful for me is just to have a practice when I'm in those situations of trying to stay respectfully curious. If I'm respectfully curious, I'm probably going to navigate it okay. If I lose either the respect or the curiosity in the conversation, I'm probably going to walk away with a regret of
Mm-hmm.
how I handled that. I'll give you a real example. Woman who had left our church, and she said the reason I left is because of how you responded to me when I asked you some honest questions about Undivided. She had some disagreements about how we were approaching it. And for a set of reasons, she's back. And kudos to her for having the integrity and courage to come to the pastor and say, I need to tell you this. And I was able to apologize, to own what was mine to own in that, and would hope that, I won a friend, right? Or I re-won a friend, or re-won a sister in Christ. But it was a reminder to me of the times when I haven't done that, when I don't stay respectfully curious. Those are definitely the conversations that I'm like, suffer from foot and mouth disease and wish I could take it back. And so I think what you're really helping me to remember, and it's true when you're dealing with kids with different abilities, whatever that may be, is can I stay respectfully curious?
So, Chuck, yeah, so we're going to do lunch soon. I'm going
Yes,
to
we
set
will.
that up. Yes, we
Okay.
will. Thank you so much for being here. We like to end with just some quick questions, okay?
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a little fun, okay?
Okay.
Chuck, what's your favorite thing to do in your free time?
Oh, man. I love the outdoors. So camping, hiking, bike riding, something outside.
Nice. Okay, what's your most memorable gift from your childhood?
I was just talking about this. My birthday actually was a couple days ago. And when
Happy
I was a
birthday.
kid, thank you. When I was a kid, I wanted a Huffy Sigma bike. I'm dating myself, but if you know, you know. Some of your listeners know. It was this bike, and instead of having like spokes in the rims of the bike, it was a disc. And it was supposed to make the bike super fast. And I remember it was a weekday when my birthday fell. So that meant I had school. And I remember waking up, and my parents had a couple little gifts for me. And I was starting to feel dejected because I'm like, I really wanted the bike. I thought I told them I wanted the bike. And then my dad was like, well, you got to finish your breakfast and then go in the kitchen. And they had the bike staged in the kitchen. And I remember I was so excited. And it was like, we might have had like 7 minutes before I had to get in the car to go to school. But I took that bike out, and it was the best 7 minutes of riding bike I
Yeah,
ever
you
had. So
did.
I was
Yeah,
just
you
thinking about that.
did.
Huffy Sigma.
That's fun. Oh, we need to get you one for an adult. Okay, if you could only eat one food, what would you eat?
Oh man, I was just thinking about this because we do icebreakers, and our family talked about this. If I could only have one food, I think it would be a breakfast food. So I think I'd probably do some kind of breakfast sandwich.
Okay. I don't like eggs, so that's making me a little
That'd be
queasy
a
just thinking
problem.
about it.
That'd be a
Yeah, that'd be a
problem.
problem.
Yeah,
Okay, Chuck, you love to sing. I have heard you sing. Sometimes you
I
just break
do.
out in song.
I
What
do.
is your go-to if you are in a great mood? What's your go-to song that you're going to break out singing?
Happy by Pharrell Williams. I love that song. If you're familiar with the Minions movie, it was a big part of the Minions movie. I
Yes.
love that song. I will play Happy when I am in that mood.
That fits your personality, Chuck.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, now last question. I want you to finish this thought. Every child,
Every child deserves dignity, love, and grace.
yes, yes. Thank you. May it be so that they
Amen.
get it.
Hmm.
Chuck, thank you for being here. I love every moment I get to spend with you. I'm thankful that I've gotten to
Me
spend so many
too.
moments with you over the years. If people, they're going to be listening, they're going to be going, I want to be Chuck friend too. So how can people get in touch with you? I see you have your Living Undivided book in the back. Tell us how we can get that. Tell us how we
Yeah.
can stay in touch with you.
Yeah, the easiest way is if you go to undivided.us, everything Undivided related is there. So if you want to get involved with Undivided, that's the best way to do it. And if you want to connect with me, I don't really use my social media channels a lot, but it is a way that I get DMs and all of that. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm at Chuck Mingo on X. I have to remember to say X and not Twitter. I'm at Chuck Mingo on X and Instagram, and those are probably the two best ways to connect with me through the socials.
And I think one of the reasons you're not super active on social is because relationships are very important to you. You have a group of dudes I know that you've been meeting with
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
forever.
Mm-hmm.
So no need to apologize. I think that's a good thing that you're not. So we just did the social media fast
Yes.
at our church.
Yes.
So that
Hmm.
was, well, I guess the TV. You talked about the TV being
I
harder
did. I
for you.
did. TV, and honestly, I'm a newsie. So like it's been both difficult but also very good for my blood pressure to
Yeah.
not have my news
Oh,
apps on my phone.
yes, yes. Yeah, and I should say it wasn't a social media fast. It was a
Right.
media
Right.
fast.
Just digital,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like for you. So,
Digital
and
fast.
lots more board games at night with the family too, which has been awesome.
Fun. Yeah, I bet there's a lot of things like that are continuing with families once we gave
Yeah.
it up for a period of time.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck, thanks for being here. I
Thanks for
appreciate
having
you.
me.
Look Chuck up, even though it'll take him a while to get back to your messages that he sends you. But thank you so much for being here, Chuck.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Every Child Belongs. If you found today's episode helpful, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to share this with a friend who might need to hear it. Together, we can create a world where every child belongs.